Beam. It's time for Nerdy 430, the podcast where we talk about nerdy-ish movies and TV for 30-ish minutes. My name is Tim Keck. Kevin is out sick with, I guess he just doesn't watch anything anymore, but I watched something fun. I watched the new live-action One Piece on Netflix. I love the anime. I'm excited to talk about it. I was like, who can I bring on to cover this incredible topic, really get into the weeds? And I thought of none other than old friend Florida Gator and former roommate, Corey Oliver. Corey, how are you doing today, man?
Oh, hey, Tim Keck. So excited to see you. I brought my pirate hat in just for the occasion. I just really wanted to say what an honor it is to be on the Nerdy for 30 podcast, with none other than, the people's champ, the big cheese of the Big Apple, the man who will undoubtedly become the king of podcasting, Mr. Timothy Keck. And also one of the top two Tims I've ever lived with, for sure.
At least in the top two.
In the top two.
One of us is an engineer. Now,
not one of us, one of the Tims.
One of the Tims is an engineer.
And there's no engineer on this call, so maybe you guys can figure it out.
All right, man. You're a One Piece fan, right? But you're into the manga, right? So
yeah, that's right.
You've read it all. And did you get into the anime at all?
Yeah, so I started with the manga probably 12 years ago or so. It was just after college. Actually, one of our mutual friends, upon his extreme insistence and nonstop badgering, I finally started to read it. And I really just slowly picked away at it and then would drop it for like 6 months to a year and then pick it back up. And then I hit a point in the story where I was just all in. Like I finally hit that moment. I was all in. I read all the way up until like the current, and I've dropped in and out over the years. But I'm a One Piece fan. I did get into the anime. I want to say a little bit. But the thing you have to understand about One Piece is when I say a little bit, I mean, I watched 200 plus episodes of this anime, and that is only a little bit when you're talking the size and scope of One Piece. So yeah, I've watched probably 200 episodes of the anime.
Yeah, I heard a great line the other day that was Grey's Anatomy. Grey's Anatomy is One Piece for white women. You've seen Grey's Anatomy. It's just like a million stories, a million different plots. You're 10 years late, like 10 seasons in, you're like, who are these people? Why am I spending so much time with them? It took me a long time to get it, like to get into it. I tried starting the anime a few times and it took a while to stick, man. I don't know. It's just such a weird world and it's a little slow, but by the time I got to the part that they cover in the live action show, I was hooked. Honestly, It's one of the best arcs. Arlong Park is one of the best arcs in the anime so far. And it's hard to give it up after that.
Yeah. Arlong Park is definitely the pinnacle of that first saga. There's all sorts of weird One Piece lingo as far as sagas and arcs and stuff like that. But Arlong Park had such a phenomenal emotional climax that's when I was also like, I'm in. And then it lost me a little bit later. And, maybe when we get into some of the weirder parts of One Piece that we haven't even gotten to in the live action yet, I fell off a little bit more. And then, man, the series just keeps sucking you back in. Like each new character has their own emotional beats and backstories that all of a sudden like give new context to everything. It just, Oda has created a beautiful world.
It is a beautiful world. If you're not familiar with One Piece, which you're living under a rock. It's like the biggest, I think it is like the highest grossing series or something now. Didn't it pass Harry Potter for like most?
Yep. It passed Harry Potter. And in the week the anime came out, the week the live action came out, also the anime was popping off with some of the most climactic things that have happened at any point in the whole series. And so there was a moment where literally the number 1 and number 4 show in the world was One Piece live action and One Piece anime. Like
It's crazy.
with Wheel of Time in there as well, which was also near and dear to my heart. So I mean, really, I've just been feasting on content these last couple months.
You gotta stop pushing Wheel of Time. I will get into it. I will revisit it someday. But until then, I have about 600 episodes to catch up on of One Piece.
Yeah, just blow through those real quick, and then you'll be fine.
If you're not familiar with the show, it is very simple and beautiful in its premise. Luffy, he's a rubber man. He stretches and he wants to be king of the pirates. And he keeps meeting people and they keep joining his crew and they all want stuff. And it's all really fantastic and weird. And they just keep going and they meet more people with powers and they all start fighting. And it's great. Top tier anime, maybe the anime. It's a ton of fun. And so Netflix has been doing these kind of live action remakes of popular anime, which is a good idea in theory, but I don't know if they always pull it off. Have you seen any of these other ones like Full Metal or Death Note? Did you have any high hopes for One Piece at all based on what we've seen so far?
So I did watch like half an episode of each of the live action things that have come out. And if you had told me 10 years ago there was going to be 3 live action adaptations of popular anime, and it was going to be Cowboy Bebop, it was going to be Death Note, and it was going to be One Piece, in a million years would I have never said One Piece would be the successful of the 3. But here we are. Somehow they broke the curse. Like One Piece managed to pull off a live action adaptation that is legitimately entertaining and that I think even non-fans of the series would have a ton of fun with.
I agree. I'd have to rewatch some of the others, I guess, to really put my finger on it. But this, they pulled it off. It seems like everybody likes this. It's good. It does have the feeling though of like it's like Dune. Remember how everyone was always like Dune is like the impossible movie. It can't be made. It's too grand in scope. That's how I feel about One Piece. It's shocking how much they were able to pull off, and yet they have so much more to come that I'm like, I have no idea how they're going to do it. It seems crazy to me. Corey, you watched the show. You liked it. Let's start off with our biggest beef, though. All right. Did you have a big beef watching this? What stood out to you as like, they might have lost me there.
Well, I don't have a lot of beefs, so some of these might be a little nitpicky. I'll give you a production beef, and I'll give you like a character beef, and then just oh man, I was kind of sad we didn't get that beef.
Yes.
So I think the biggest legitimate criticism I have is probably the overuse of the fisheye and the close-up lens, which is such a specific thing. And I know what they were going for. They're going for these things that were supposed to be these basically recreations of manga panels of literally like, here is what it looks like when it's drawn. And here is the character in live action with that same view. But I just felt you had way too many scenes where the camera was like right here on someone. And I get it, like budget wise, you don't have to worry about a background when you're filming like that. And you can do reshoots and all sorts of stuff. But I just thought it was overused a little bit when so many of the sets were gorgeous and like everything about the show was awesome. Just that was my nitpick on the production side.
I'm sure it's more. I agree with what you're saying. I'm sure it was more out of necessity than a choice, but they did also kind of make it seem like it could be a choice. But I don't know if we're trying to recreate this. I mean, they just have such a monumental task of creating these like vistas and backgrounds. Like One Piece is like beautiful to watch. All the landscapes are crazy. Anytime they go to a new island, a new place, it looks completely different. You know, one's made of candy, one's like all full of snow, one's got like, I don't know, talking ducks for some reason. And they're all like magical looking. And I guess a close up on someone's face is a good way to cut some money on a live action version of this, which is insane. What was the other beef?
So I guess I have one legitimate. Here's my less legitimate beef. This is my real, just like they made my boy Arlong too small. Like this Fishman, you know, I was fine with the prosthetics, prosthetics over the CGI. Like they managed to make Fishman in a world filled with like, I was going to say filled with normal looking people, but there's lots of things that are not normal about One Piece. But with a bunch of human actors, having Fishman in a scene and have it work was impressive. Arlong in the manga, Arlong in the anime is this big hulking dude. He is scary. He is intimidating. He towers over everyone. And in the show, he wasn't even the biggest fishman. Like, I don't know exactly why they did that. Like, he's got a bodyguard like behind him that's like looking twice as big and posted up all the time. And I know they could do it. They did it with Axan Morgan, the Marine. Like, he felt large compared to the other characters. You know, even when they're fighting him, he somehow towered over them. But Arlong was just like this dude in a Hawaiian shirt. And I don't know if it's because like the prosthetics on his head made the rest of his body look too small because his head was like disproportionately large, but they did my boy Arlong dirty. Should have been bigger.
You're right. They did the thing you're asking with Axan Axan Morgan.
Yep.
He was bigger. He was more intimidating. And Arlong wasn't like that. It felt like when Cuba Gooding Jr. played O.J. Simpson and that like the American Crime Story or whatever, where you're like, I'm pretty sure O.J. Simpson was 100 pounds bigger and 2 feet taller than Cuba. I don't know if he can do a backflip like Cuba, but still, you know, this guy is supposed to be so monumental and physically imposing. And that seems to be like a frequent thing in the anime too. Is the protagonist is this scrawny little rubber guy, and constantly he is coming up to people's waists and then kicking their ass, and it is so fun. And the like crazy size gaps between him and his opponents all the time does take it to that next level.
And again, if they didn't do it with Morgan, I'd say whatever, it's fine. You're not going to have a guy that looks twice as tall or 3 times as tall as another person, but like Morgan loomed over them. And so to see, you know, they tried to play up Arlong more like a mob boss that could also fight rather than him being like the biggest bruiser in the room.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean,
it was like the opposite problem of Dave Bautista. Like Dave Bautista, his head is too small for his giant body. And this was like Arlong's head was just too big for his small body.
Yeah, I do think he looked good. I mean, they had shots where it's just people in, I think it was like prosthetics looking like fish people around a pool. And it looked great. I don't know how they did it. Even Arlong, I thought, looked way better than I thought he would, despite being a foot shorter than like his henchman, the manta ray or whatever.
Yeah,
I was wondering when they were going to bring
listeners of the pod.
Dude.
If you've never seen, if listeners of the pod, if you haven't seen this show yet, 1, you should go and see this show. But 2, just Google like One Piece Fishman, and you'll see the characters we're talking about, and they did a good job on the prosthetics. I agree. You know, it felt lived in. They felt like, you know, real people, real characters, but it just, those proportions were off for me.
Okay, what was you had another one though? Wait, was that your minor beef and this is the big one?
So this is my big one, because for me, I actually don't really care if an adaptation wants to change things. Like, by all means, a manga like is going to be different than the anime, though they're pretty, you know, 1 for 1, is going to be different than a live action recreation. Like, I totally get that. I'm okay with that. But they cut out a character from Usopp's arc and they didn't do anything to replace him. And that was Django. Django was a character that basically his whole shtick was he hypnotized people, and he was terrible at it because he would accidentally hypnotize himself in the process all the time. One Piece is funny. One Piece is full of dumb, weird gags all the time. If you've never experienced it, that's part of the charm of it, is you have these really serious fights and these intense character moments and backstories, and then slapstick dumb humor. So they cut out this guy Django, and the whole thing with Django was he was hypnotizing people. He was trying to deceive characters in the manga. It's been a long time since I've read. But basically Usopp has to be the one to fight him and overcome him to help save the people he loves. And Usopp's whole thing is he's a coward. And so him overcoming that fear and facing this guy was a legitimately important moment for his character. And instead, you basically have Zoro fighting the cat duo and Luffy fighting Kuro, and nothing for Usopp to do in that arc. And they didn't really replace it with anything. So, yeah, that was my legitimate story beef there.
I agree. Usopp doesn't really have any real change during our introduction to him. He doesn't overcome an obstacle. He shoots a slingshot like to distract one of them while Luffy fights him and Zoro fights him. He does not do. They almost don't need him in the whole thing. He doesn't discover the plot with the T. He's just not essential to the arc where we are meeting his character for the first time. And he's an amazing character. He's crazy good. And then he like makes out with the girl like before they leave. Did you think that was weird? That doesn't happen in the anime.
I don't think that happens in the manga, but I'm okay with it. Like, you always knew they had that connection. You know, there's like flashbacks to like, you know, her looking at a newspaper and seeing Usopp's picture and being excited. Like, that was definitely like in the heart of the story, even if the kiss never happened. And I will say that the actor playing Usopp, and especially in the episode after his arc, that actor is phenomenal. Like, he has mad really riz. He is talking up people at the bar. He is acting like a big shot, which is Usopp's whole MO. Is he is a liar and he's a storyteller, but you love him for it. And I thought they did such a good job portraying that with him.
If you had to pick one of the actors to be like, this is like the biggest thief of the thing, did you have a character or an actor that you were just like nailed it, crushed it? Or is Usopp it?
Oh, I mean, if you had asked me, my thief in general is the casting across this show. Like, yes. 100%, the casting was phenomenal. The casting of the side minor characters, you know, I won't take that as my like full answer, but like Garp, amazing. Freaking Mihawk, Hawkeye's Mihawk had so much just charisma dripping off of him. You know, Zeph, the chef from the Bratier, my boy Lucky Roo from Shanks's crew, looked straight out of the manga, straight out of the anime.
Incredible.
Like, and they literally have him beating another dude with a hunk of meat, like right out of the story. Just, I loved all the casting. I think where they did the best in terms of a change actually from the source material was Sanji. I think Sanji's actor. So, hi, folks. If you've never watched anime, the perv stereotype is a big factor there. Like, the overly horny, just pervy dude. And it's a little gross, especially for Western audiences. It's part of the medium. It's part of the like culture of anime and manga over there. Like, I'm not going to debate like good or bad in regards to that, but it would feel weird in a live action adaptation to have him literally like passing out when a pretty woman looks at him because he can't handle, you know, just being around a woman. So instead they made Sanji a charmer and was totally happy to get rejected. And yeah, I thought Sanji's actor was really good. I liked his accent. The actor himself went to culinary like classes and legitimately was cooking for like the whole crew on set. Yeah, I think Sanji may have taken it for me for the main crew.
I feel like initially I was like, maybe for each of these characters, initially I was like, and then they all won me over. You're right. The change with Sanji's character is fantastic. He's more of a flirt than a perv. And in live action, honestly, you kind of need that. I think my biggest beef was, well, Tiny, I don't know. Did you like Shanks in this? Because that was like the only actor that like it took me the longest to like warm up to. It just didn't seem like Shanks was the right vibe. And I'm not even that far. I'm only like 400 episodes in, so I haven't gotten that much time with Shanks. But it just didn't feel 100%. His crew, it felt better. His crew looked better and felt better and more like, you know, what I expected than Shanks himself. Did you feel that way?
I would agree with that. I think the best characterization we got of Shanks was when you see Mihawk meet up with him, which is post like the early Shanks, because you get to know Shanks. So you get to know Shanks from like a flashback of Luffy as a kid. And so you see Shanks's crew, you know, they're all getting ready to set out for the Grand Line to go and become great pirates. And I agree, Shanks was probably one of the weaker ones on the show initially. But then when you see him post time skip and Mihawk walks up and he's like nursing a hangover with his crew and stuff like that. And then he gets super excited to find out Luffy's now become a pirate and has a bounty. Like, that was the Shanks I felt like coming through right there. So.
Yes, man. Honest, their fight too in the bar was great. Whereas Crew's fighting and Lucky or whatever is beating the guy with the meat, and they're like both pulling guns out and like shooting everybody else. Honestly, that might have been my favorite fight scene in the whole thing. Even though one of my biggest beefs is going to be the fighting. It's
okay.
I know that when we get a TV show version of any of these like big productions, we're compromising on the fighting. You know, the Disney Plus TV shows aren't going to look as good as like a Marvel movie. This isn't going to look as good as like a legit film. But there were moments, like, I don't know if you saw the clip of like Zorro rolling and his sword just folding in half.
Yeah.
There were a handful of moments where I was like, they could have like tweaked this a little bit. And since it's Netflix, I always hold up Daredevil as like the gold standard. Did you ever watch Daredevil?
Yeah, I saw some of it.
Some of the fights in that are like insane and like close combat. And that's like a much realer, much grittier thing. But I feel like they could have just like kicked it up a notch with just like a little bit of tweaking, maybe some better choreography. It just always felt like a little underwhelming for me.
I was half and half. I'm with you on part of it. And so some of the fights were incredible. I think Zorro in the bar, that initial fight where he never even draws his sword and he's taken down the entire crew of Marines, like that was maybe the best like fighting in the whole show. And if it wasn't, it was maybe second best to the Shanks crew flashback fight.
Yeah.
Which just the way that fight starts, I mean, Shanks just holds up two fingers, pointing at a man who's threatening his friends. And he says, "Don't threaten my friends." And then he basically pulls his finger like he's shooting a gun. And all of a sudden the dude drops dead. And you look behind Shanks and there's Lucky Roo with this big dumb grin on his face, just like, "I got you, Captain." And there were definitely ups and downs on the fights. I can see that being an issue some of the time.
I'm such a sucker in general for just like found family stuff. And anytime they show synergy between Luffy's crew, but especially when you see it, when you meet other crews and like Shanks, like that kind of moment and that kind of chemistry and just absolutely trust in another person that like, I'm not even going to move. I just know my guy is going to like, you know, destroy this person before they attack me. I fall for it every time. It's so fun. It's like one of the best things anime does, I think, better than live action in general. It's just, man, you get some crazy moments of this. My biggest thief in like the first part of this is on that same thread, like Nami asking Luffy for help. I get like emotional just thinking about it. Honestly, I got a little emotional watching the live action, and man, I mean, nothing matches the anime for that, but I think they did a really good job with it, with a moment that I think is, gosh, I mean, anime does that so much better than any other medium, is this like huge build up to a moment where, you know, someone finally arrives or somebody finally asks for help, or like nothing else builds to these moments. The closest thing is like professional wrestling when someone's music hits and they run out. There's nothing else like it. You don't see movies like that. Or like The Rock pulling his gun on someone in like Fast 6, maybe, but anime does that so well. And this is the closest I've seen from that. They kind of pulled it off, right?
They pulled it off. I literally had, before we got on this call, as I was eating dinner, I went back and was like, what's a scene from One Piece I want to watch to just get back into the world before I pod with my friend Tim? Literally the Nami scene was where I went, because her just being broken down, literally like crying, stabbing herself in the arm in this tattoo that is the symbol of her, like, you know, torment for so many years. And then Luffy coming in and just grabbing her arm and stopping her from stabbing herself. Like, so good. And that was one of those things that there were a few times where the anime, where the live action didn't hit as well as the manga or the anime emotionally. And there were a few times where I think it hit more. And this one was right there with at least hit on par for me. The only thing I would have done differently, and it's a personal taste thing, a friend of mine had an opposite opinion. I didn't need him to yell at the end. You know, him quietly saying, you know, of course I will, Nami, and then saying in a really serious tone, of course I will, before he literally turns to the crew and says, let's go, crew. And they all just say, right. And then you get the march to Arlong Park. Like, I didn't need him to yell to the air, like, of course I will. Like, even though that's how it happens in the anime, in the manga, like literally she says, help me. And I'm pretty sure his only response is yes, just huge, all capital, like letters, like arms outstretched, like it was just the word yes. And I think emotionally it hit better with the quiet moment in the live action.
And he puts his hat on her head, which is crazy because what does this happen? This is like 30 episodes in, or like, I don't know, 30 books in. And this is now, you're like 8 hours into this show. And the whole time it's all about this guy and his hat. It's the most important thing in the world to him. And then a friend asks for help and he puts it on her head. He's like, hold this. I'm giving you the most important thing in my life so I can go fight for the most important thing in your life. It's awesome. And I get chills just thinking about it.
Oh.
God, it's anime at its best is evoking those kinds of emotions. I was thinking more about Luffy and another, no, I don't want to spoil, but there are other members of the crew. And I mean, honestly, the whole One Piece is him meeting people like this who eventually ask him for help and he gives it. But it seems like maybe a character trait of Luffy that is interesting is that I don't think he just helps ever. Like, he needs you to ask and he needs you to want it. And I think that's a super interesting trait. He never he will do nice things for people, but when it's a peer, he just needs to know that that this genuinely matters for him. He needs to hear the words, and once you tell him what your dream is, he'll do anything for you. But you have to believe in that, and you have to believe in yourself, and you have to believe in what you're saying before he goes all the way for you. And it's just another good anime trope. It's awesome. I can't get enough of it, honestly. It's my favorite thing.
And I don't know if you felt as strongly about all of the emotional moments.
Yeah. So what other ones did you think like hit better than the anime?
Oh, I legitimately was tearing up during the Sanji Zeph flashback when they are stranded on an island without food. And that moment is intense in the manga. So do yourself a favor, watch this stuff, read this stuff. I don't want to spoil everything, but, basically a pirate gets stranded on an island with a boy. They only have a little bit of food. It doesn't look like anybody's coming around to rescue them. The pirate says to this boy, Sanji, he says, I split up the food. You take your bag. You go to that half of the island and keep a lookout. I'm going to stay on this half of the island and keep a lookout. Don't come bother me, kid, unless there's a ship. Good luck. And then they are on this island for weeks and weeks. And you see Sanji wasting away and getting skinnier, and he's rationing his food. And he finally gets to where he's out of food. And he finally is like, I need to eat. Like, I'm going to go, to that old man pirate. I'm going to go take any food he's got left. Like, this is a kid. This is like 6-year-old kid. He's like, I'm going to go kill this adult man and take his food or whatever I have to, because I'm starving now. After going 50 plus days without food. And to see it represented in the live action for the twist at the end, I don't know if I want to reveal it to everyone, but he then, that then leads to the loyalty of Sanji to this, who eventually becomes his mentor figure, Red Leg Zeph. Man, that moment just hits so hard.
That is great. I do love that moment, man. Another thief I had, and then I don't know if you had any more thieves, but another one that I really wanted your opinion on was, I think one of the things that was maybe a little difficult for me to wrap my head around with One Piece in general is like the morality in it, and who are the good guys, who are the bad guys. And they don't really I don't feel like they discuss that in the anime, but they do discuss it in this. And basically you have pirates. If you want to go out on the high seas and live your life out on the ocean, you're either a Marine, which is like the army, or you're a pirate, which is you're just out there doing your own thing. And if you're a pirate, you're wanted, it's illegal, you're like a bad guy. And if you're a Marine, you're upholding the world order and the government, and you're quote unquote a good guy. But just because you're a Marine and just because you're a pirate doesn't automatically mean you're a good guy or a bad guy. And honestly, from person to person, from arc to arc, it completely changes. The Marines are the bad guys more than not. There are good pirates out there. It's just, it's kind of chaos. And in this, they actually do say, like, there's good and bad Marines, there's good and bad pirates. And they had these more like philosophical like moments that I thought were great and like much needed clarity in this live action thing.
I was really glad they included that and they said it explicitly, because it actually goes all the way back to the original like ideas that Oda had when he was creating One Piece. Originally, if you read the original Romance Dawn, which was like the precursor to One Piece, he at that point, he actually had names for these types of pirates. You were either I'm trying to remember the name.
That sounds way too difficult.
You were either a Freeman or a Morganier or something like that. Like they actually gave, like Oda gave titles to good pirates and bad pirates. Or Peacemain. It was Peacemain and Morganiers, and Morganiers were the bad ones and Peacemains were the good ones. And obviously it sounds childish, and like this was early One Piece ideas from like, whenever he started it back in the 90s and stuff. But it was where the core of the story was initially was, yeah, you have pirates and sometimes they're bad pirates like you think of, and sometimes they're good pirates. And yeah, just because you're a pirate doesn't make you bad or good. And just like that, the Marines doesn't make you bad or good. I really like that the show just was explicit with that and brought it up right away.
I agree. I thought it was great. Did you have any other quick thieves before we get out of here?
Oh, man, Tim, how have we been talking this long and we didn't mention Buggy at all?
Buggy's great. Buggy, so good in this.
The clown. I can't believe we haven't talked about Buggy yet. Again, just the casting in this show is phenomenal. Buggy is literally a clown pirate. He has a devil fruit, which is the magic like powers that people get. They eat fruits that give them magical powers. And this guy is a clown that literally separates parts of his body to fly around. And he is so much fun. He is intimidating and scary and also goofy and dumb all at the same time. Oh, Buggy was such a highlight for this show. I can't believe I didn't even mention him until now.
Buggy crushed it. The actor knew exactly what was up. And man, Buggy's winning a place in my heart for sure. One of the other things that I thought was kind of like weird about One Piece getting into it was how absurd everything is, but then they take it incredibly seriously. Like I gave the example before of like, there's a moment where there's like a talking duck in this who is like a member of like the army. And from one second to another, he is either treated like a cartoon duck or he is treated like a member of the armed forces with all of the like integrity that is. And I think, how do you think this show can go forward? Because the farther it goes, the more absurd it gets and the crazier it is. Do you think they can do a couple more seasons of live action One Piece?
It's going to be hard. I think their heads and hearts are in the right place. I mean, they have Garp on screen with a dog hat on and nobody comments and makes a quip on it. There's no Marvel style like jokes about it. It's just, here's the world, take it for what it is. So the spirit is there. If the budget's willing, because there's a lot of wild shit that comes down the pike. I mean, even just, the next characters, the next crew members we get, spoilers, there's going to be more crew members than just the 5 we get in season 1. One of them is, can I say it? I mean, one of them is a reindeer. It's a talking reindeer. It's a reindeer human. Like, you're either going to have to do ridiculous CGI to the level of like a Jar Jar Binks all the time, just like constantly there in the middle of the crew. Or you're going to have to like make a Muppet and have it as a Muppet, which there's a lot of people that would love to see Muppet Chopper, or you change it and make him a kid and basically have him as, a mostly human looking kid most of the time that then can transform, into his various reindeer forms. But yeah, it's wild. I mean, we got, giants. There's giants in this show, Tim. There's Like, I know there's a bunch of people that want in the fan community that want Tenacious D to play Dorian Broggie. And I think that would be an excellent casting.
That would be incredible.
Jamie Lee Curtis has already said she wants to play Dr. Correja from Chopper's arc. So he's on board.
My God.
Perfect casting there. But yeah, there's wild stuff in One Piece. I mean, even just the powers, Luffy stretches like a giant rubber band. We mentioned Buggy that separates parts of his body. Like, that's just the weird, like, regular fruits that we see. There's also like an entire category of magic users that are all animal people. And we saw that with like fishmen. So there's like, you can do that. You can pull that off. But then you have powers that are literally called like Logia powers that are basically elemental powers. You have somebody that literally is the power of sand and the power of magma and fire. Like, how do you do that with a budget that's not like through the roof? I don't know how they do it.
I don't know, but I can't wait to see it. Corey, thanks so much for coming by, man. I appreciate it. I feel like we could keep going for another hour or whatever, but it's Nerdy for 30. If
the fans want, like, we could always do a part 2, like, but the fans have to speak.
If the fans speak, we'll get you a part 2. Corey, you got anything you want to plug on our way out?
No, sure. I mean, you can look me up on Instagram, Corey J. Oliver on there. You can see me like juggling fire and stuff like that.
Yes.
Gardening, cooking stuff, average
all
things average people do in Florida.
All the kind of stuff a pirate on the Grand Line would be into.
Exactly.
Thank you at home or in the car or what. I mean, you got somewhere you have this podcast playing and you're still listening. Maybe. Thank you so much for listening. As always, tell a friend, tell an enemy. Let's spread this one around. And you can always subscribe to us on YouTube. Give us a little rate and review. I don't know, man. I appreciate that you listened. And thanks for coming by. I guess that's it. How does Kevin usually end it? Stay nerdy.
Bye.
Bye.